So let's talk about something that's starting to get some serious buzz around the league. Because when the Chicago Bears are hovering around that maybe we're contenders, maybe not kind of zone, you start hearing all kinds of names pop up in trade rumors. And one of the more interesting ones to surface lately, Jalen Phillips. Yeah, that Jalen Phillips. Former first-rounder. Big-time pass rushing potential, but also injury concerns. So let's unpack this one and really get into whether he makes any sense for the Bears, because honestly, it's not as simple as go get another edge rusher. Now, ESPN's insiders have thrown his name into the mix as a possible trade candidate if the Miami Dolphins decide to start selling pieces. And from a talent perspective, it's easy to see why teams would be interested. The guy exploded onto the scene as a rookie with 8.5 sacks, even though he wasn't a full-time starter. Then followed that up with 7 more the next year. Solid numbers for a young guy still figuring things out. And last season, he was on pace for a breakout. 6.5 sacks in just 8 games before. Boom, another injury. And that's the issue right there. The production flashes. The upside is real. But the guy just can't seem to stay on the field. This year, 3 games, 0 sacks, only 9 tackles. He's got the frame, the explosiveness, the instincts. He checks every box you want in a premier edge guy. But if you can't rely on him to be healthy, then it doesn't matter how high the ceiling is. Availability is everything in this league. Now, could it make sense for Chicago to take a swing anyway? Maybe. But the context matters here. He's on a contract year, which means if you trade for him, you're either renting him for half a season or you're looking at giving him extension. And that's where things start to get dicey. Because now you're not just investing draft capital, you're also possibly handing out a chunk of change to a player who hasn't proven he could be consistently on the field. That's a tough sell, especially for a Bears team still in the middle of figuring out exactly who they are in 2024. If Miami wants a day 3 pick for him, okay, maybe that's worth a gamble. Bring him in, see how he fits, maybe give him a short extension that protects you financially. But if they're looking for something like a 2nd or 3rd round pick, that feels steep, especially given the injury track record. This team can't afford to be reckless with assets, especially if we're still not sure whether this year is about a real playoff push or continued development. Now, all that said, adding help on the edge is still something this front office should be thinking about. Because if this team gets to the trade deadline sitting at, let's say, 5-3 or even 4-4 with a shot at that 7th playoff spot, why wouldn't you look to reinforce one of the most important positions on the field? We all know you can never have too many guys who can get after the quarterback. And right now, the Bears have had moments of decent pressure, but they're still missing that true, consistent disruptor. That brings us to another interesting name that's starting to circulate, Kavon Thibodeaux. Yeah, that's a name that's been coming up more and more over the past month or so. The Giants are in full-on evaluation mode right now. Their season has shifted toward figuring out if Jackson Dart is the real deal and if Brian Daboll is the guy to develop him long-term. So winning games? It's not priority number 1 for them anymore. That means almost anybody not on a rookie deal or seen as a long-term foundational piece could be available. So yeah, someone like Kavon could be in play. Now, let's be clear, Thibodeaux is playing well, and the Giants probably aren't desperate to move on. But if the right offer comes along, never say never. If they keep losing, they're going to have to make some decisions. And the interesting part is not just whether they'd move Thibodeaux, but which of their defensive stars they'd be willing to ship off. You got Brian Burns, who's getting closer to 30 and might not be part of their long-term plan. You've got Dexter Lawrence, who's in his prime, but whose trade value might never be higher than it is right now. And of course, you've got Thibodeaux, who still has the 5th-year option already picked up, so there's some team control there. You're not renting him. You're getting a guy with at least another year and a half locked in. But what would it take to get him? If you're asking me, I'm not giving up a 1st-round pick for him right now. Maybe a 2nd, if he continues to perform. Maybe you can build a deal around some picks and a player. But this is a guy who still has upside, and in the right system, could become a real problem for opposing offenses. You pair him with Montez Sweat on the other side, and suddenly that Bears defensive front looks a lot more dangerous. Now, let's pivot for a second, because while edge rusher is clearly a hot topic, it's not the only position people are talking about. Got a super chat asking about Breece Hall. And yeah, I'll admit that one is intriguing. The Bears' run game has been underwhelming. Through the first 3 games, their backs are averaging just 3.4 yards per carry. That's not going to cut it. And it's not like the offensive line has been awful. Actually, the pass protection has looked better than expected. But the run blocking hasn't been dominant. And when you combine that with backs who aren't breaking a ton of tackles, you get exactly what we've seen, average to below average production. Now, Breece Hall is a different kind of back. When healthy, he's explosive. He can hit the home run. And while the Jets probably don't want to trade him, if they start to fall out of contention, maybe that door opens. We've seen stranger things happen. And for the Bears, if this offense is really going to take the next step, they got to get more balance. The passing game is finally starting to click, but without a consistent run game to complement it, they're going to hit a ceiling. What would it cost to get a player like Breece? That's tough to say. Maybe a third-rounder, depending on a market and how desperate the Jets are. But if the Bears come out of the next couple games with a couple wins and they're still in the playoff picture, you've got to look at every avenue to improve. And a legit running back who can change games with one cut, that's a weapon worth considering. But let's not pretend that just adding a guy fixes everything. The Bears still need to clean things up on the defensive line, especially in the run game. You've got guys like Gervon Dexter flashing as a pass rusher, but struggling in run defense. That's not going to cut it. If you're letting opposing backs find creases and run downhill, it doesn't matter how many sacks you get. You got to win on first and second down to put teams in passing situations. And if you can't do that, guys like Dexter and Sweat don't get a chance to do what they do best. And speaking of opposing backs, this week's matchup could get dicey if the Bears aren't ready to contain a guy like Zamir White or whoever ends up getting the bulk of the carries for Vegas. You do not want to be the team that lets a struggling young back suddenly find his groove. And with the way the Bears' run defense has looked at times, yeah, that's a concern. So overall, we're starting to hit that point in the season where you have to ask the tough questions. Is this a year to push your chips in and go after a guy like Phillips or Thibodeaux or Breece Hall? Or is this still a year where development takes priority? Because if you're going to be buyers at the deadline, you've got to be smart about it. You can't just throw picks at every shiny name that hits the trade block. You need guys who fit the culture, fit the scheme, and actually stay on the field. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels. Now, beyond the trade rumors and speculation, there's something else that's starting to take shape with this Bears team, and that's the identity on offense. And yeah, for the first time in what feels like forever, there's actually a little optimism there. The passing attack is starting to show signs of life. You've got receivers making plays. The timing is improving. And suddenly, this doesn't feel like a unit that's completely lost anymore. But make no mistake, the run game is still holding this offense back. And unless that changes, it's going to be hard to stack wins consistently. Ben Johnson said earlier this week that he feels like the run game is close to breaking out. That maybe, just maybe, we're one good performance away from unlocking that next level. But we've heard that before. Bears fans have been hearing we're close for what feels like years now. So what needs to happen to finally turn that corner? It starts up front. The offensive line has to be more consistent, especially in the interior. The tackles have held their own in pass protection, but the push in the run game hasn't been there on a regular basis. And then there's the backfield. It's not just about who's running the ball, it's how they're being used. You got to start leaning into what each guy does best. Khalil Herbert has had moments, but he's not the kind of back who's going to create on his own when the blocking breaks down. Roscoe Johnson, there's potential there. Tough runner, solid vision, but he needs more touches to find a rhythm. And Dante Foreman, when healthy, has shown he can be that downhill bruiser. But the rotation hasn't really settled in. There's no rhythm, no clear identity. That's why a guy like Breece Hall gets mentioned, because he could give you that spark, that clarity in the backfield. But even if the Bears don't make a move, they've got to find a formula that works with the pieces they already have. And that needs to happen fast. Looking ahead to this week's game, one of the biggest concerns has to be Max Crosby. I mean, this guy is a game wrecker. Plain and simple. And with the Bears potentially down to their third or fourth option at right tackle, that's a scary matchup. Crosby's the type of edge rusher that doesn't just get sacks. He creates momentum-shifting plays. Strip sacks, drive killers. He'll blow up a run play before it even starts. So the Bears have to be smart here. You don't let that guy go one-on-one against a backup tackle. You chip him with tight ends. You help with running backs. You slide protection his way. Whatever it takes to keep him from changing the game. Braxton Jones has played better recently, but this isn't just about one tackle. If Darnell Wright can't go, and you're asking someone like Larry Borum or even a practice squad elevation to hold down that right side, it's all hands on deck. This is where scheme comes into play. Get the ball out quick. Move the pocket. Keep Crosby guessing. Because if he gets into a rhythm, if he starts feeling like he can pin his ears back and just hunt, it's going to be a long afternoon. And the rest of the Raiders' defensive line? Honestly, they're just guys. Crosby is the engine. You stop him, you stop most of what they do up front. Switching sides for a moment, the Bears' defense still has a lot of questions to answer. And one of the big ones this week is how do you handle a guy like Trey Tucker? He might not be a household name yet, but that speed is legit. He can take the top off a defense in a heartbeat. And if you're not playing with discipline on the back end, he will make you pay. That's why someone like Kevin Byard has to step up. He's been around the block. He knows how to read route concepts and keep things in front of him. But at 33 years old, it's fair to ask if he's still got the juice to cover that kind of vertical threat. This would have been the perfect game to have Kyler Gordon back. He's quick, smart, versatile, exactly the type of defensive back you want helping out against a guy like Tucker. But unless something changes last minute, it doesn't sound like he's going to be available. So you got to roll with what you have. That means communication has to be sharp. That means no busted coverages, no letting a guy run free down the seam. The Bears have to make the Raiders earn every yard. And that starts with discipline, especially in the secondary. And yeah, we got to talk about the corner situation. Because it's not great. Injuries have piled up, and the depth is getting tested hard. You've got young guys try to figure it out on the fly, and that's a dangerous combination when you're facing teams that can stretch the field. There's a question about possibly bringing in someone like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and on paper, it kind of makes sense. The Bears are thin at defensive back, and Gardner-Johnson has history with the coaching staff. He's played at a high level when locked in. But the issue isn't talent. It's everything else. Everywhere this guy goes, there seems to be drama. He's been cut, traded, let walk by teams that clearly valued him on the field, but didn't want to deal with him in the locker room. The Texans cut him after starting 0-3. That says something. And with a young team trying to build a new culture, bringing in someone with that kind of reputation might do more harm than good. The Bears need leaders. They need consistency. Gardner-Johnson might offer some short-term help, but at what cost? That's the dilemma. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Chicago Bears. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers are swirling through the NFL corridors this week after Raiders head coach Pete Carroll, known more for his calm demeanor and sunny Pacific Northwest charm, reportedly had some less than flattering words about the Chicago Bears. While coaches often keep their critiques professional and private, sources say Carroll didn't mince words when discussing his potential opponents. According to insiders, Carroll expressed doubts about the Bears' current roster and coaching strategy, painting a picture of a team struggling to find consistency on both sides of the ball. The comments, though unofficial, have already sparked a firestorm among Bears fans on social media, with many questioning Carroll's motives. Is this a strategic mind game ahead of a potential showdown, or just an unguarded slip from a usually composed coach? The Raiders' locker room, meanwhile, seems unfazed. Some players reportedly find Carroll's outspoken style refreshing, suggesting that his blunt assessments can serve as motivation rather than distraction. Coach always tells it like it is, one unnamed Raider player said. If he thinks someone is struggling, he'll say it. That's part of why we trust him. Chicago, predictably, hasn't taken the remarks lying down. Analysts speculate that Bears management may quietly use this as fuel for their team, reminding players that even respected coaches question their abilities. Veteran Bears players, known for their resilience, could see this as a challenge rather than a slight. The timing of Carroll's comments adds another layer to the rumor mill. With both team schedules still shaping up and potential matchups on the horizon, insiders suggest that this could be more than just idle chatter. It might be a tactical move designed to get inside the Bears' headspace. Rivalries in the NFL are often stoked not just on the field, but through moments like this, where words and subtle jabs can carry as much weight as touchdowns and sacks. While no official statements have been released, the buzz is undeniable. Carroll's critique of the Bears has created an undercurrent of tension in the league. Fans are already speculating about a future clash, imagining what could unfold if the Raiders and Bears meet. Will Carroll's comments backfire, or will they signal the start of a new, fiery rivalry in the league? Only time will tell, but for now, the rumor mill is alive, and the NFL chatter has a new headline. Pete Carroll, ever the strategist, is making waves off the field before the next whistle even blows. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Chicago Bears, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.